Right, okay. Thank you very much, Brian. Right, I'm just going to sort of go through a few things that we can see in the autumn sky. There's a few things going on. Let me just see if I've got a pointer first. Yes, I have. Okay, so first of all, phases of the moon. Now, coming up this weekend, the moon will be new, actually on Saturday, and the phases increase thereafter. And for observing, we obviously want not very much of a moon in the sky. Of course, now the crescent moon, the waxing crescent moons, that comes shortly after sunset in the early evening. And so next weekend, the following weekend, the 4th, when we are potentially at Delamont Country Park in Killyleagh, or the 5th down at Newry, Mullaghbourne, down at Newry on the 5th, we'll have a very thin sort of 4 or 5 day old moon, first quarter moon, which will disappear quite shortly after sunset. This time of year, the angle of the ecliptic comes into play particularly, and what happens with this sequence of moon phases is that the slope is very low after sunset, so the moon is quite low in the sky after sunset, but actually at the other end, towards the end of the month, that's the thin crescent moon the other way in the morning, the waning crescent, and that comes almost straight downwards. At this time of year, it's a very steep angle of descent. So actually, it's a very good time to get up early in the morning to look at thin moons, if that's what you're into. I try not to. I try and stay in bed a bit longer these days. Don't do so many early mornings these days. So that's really the moon. Full moon is round about the 13th of October. Curiously, and it's one of those things that I suppose everyone can have a view on. I looked on time and date just to see where the moon was, and it helpfully points out that the new moon of the 28th of September, Saturday, i.e. the new moon that you can't see, it helpfully points out it's a supermoon. So that's a bigger moon that you can't see. I don't know what the point of this is. But what it does mean is that the full moon actually in October will be a relatively small one. But the actual variation is not huge percentage-wise. So there's phases of the moon. The observing, Brian pointed out the observing dates. The 5th being not at Delamont, it's at the outreach venue. Also on that, the 25th, 26th of October are earmarked in, and that's when we've got a very thin moon down here, those 2 days. So there's the moon. Now we've got a whole bunch of ISS passes going on at the minute. And some very good ones coming up as well, actually. In fact, not that we'll see it, I'm afraid, but there's a really, really good one just after this meeting at 9:10 tonight. But look for these. Look for the brighter ones. -3.5 is about as bright as the ISS ever gets, and we've got a couple of those in here. Also, you look at the altitude. Now we're 54.5 degrees north here, so the ISS is never overhead here because it's in a 51-degree inclined orbit. Which was designed so that it could be seen from Moscow to get Russian money involved. But you can get 51, 50 degrees, 49 degrees, so really more than halfway up the sky. Pretty high passes coming through on, again, 27th is, sorry, that's not today, it's the 25th today, isn't it? Yeah, 2109, and same time actually on Friday. That's my special birthday pass of the ISS going on there. And a good few after that. It carries on to the 9th of October, but as usual, they become slightly less good in the last few days of that. So that's International Space Station. Have a look at that. There are some transits of this happening. This is something I've tried to photograph a few times with some degree of success, actually. And there's a lunar transit on the 6th of October in the evening, 2023. Just there, and you need to be in this line here of places. So if you were in, say, Lisbon, that would be a great place to see that, because you're right bang on the centre line there. But also anywhere up and down here, even Belfast gets a bit of a look in. What happens there is that it is this actually that it doesn't go straight across the middle. But this picture means the white of this means that the space station is illuminated at that time. That shows the phase of the moon at the time. Now they give these star ratings, and that has a particular meaning. The reason this is only a 2-star is that the angular size of the ISS there at 20 arc seconds is relatively small. The ISS can be sort of 40 or 50 arc seconds quite easily, so it can be twice the size against the disk of the moon. You will see, if you take I use a 4K video camera, which takes 30 pictures every second, because this doesn't take long. This takes 1.34 seconds. So across in that bit of movement there, I'd get maybe 40 pictures. But that's that there. And you will see, because the space station reflects more light than the moon, you will see it in front of the moon when both are illuminated even. So if you want to know more about that, transitfinder.com is a wonderful website where you just put in some dates and your location, and it gives you maps and stuff like that to look at. It's quite fun. There's
so if I just come in quickly on that.
Yeah.
These ISS transits do check the website in the hours before.
Oh, if they've fired the rockets to change the orbit, then everything can change. Yeah, so I mean, it actually only gives you 30 days ahead, but really, I'd check the same day in case they have adjusted the orbits. There's a couple of solar ones coming up that can go in front of the planet. Now, if you are going to do this, you need a very well-filtered solar telescope. I shouldn't have to tell people this, but you'd be surprised. And Sunday the 13th of October, there's one, that's the path there, so Carrickfergus, Dungannon, across Loch Ney there. And on the Tuesday, the 15th, there's one there that goes right through Belfast. Now, you may wonder why it's such a broad path, and when you look at the details, it's 1752 will be not very far from the setting of the sun. So it's going to pass in front of the sun as the sun sets. Probably difficult to see. So again, only 2 stars for that one. And very small, angular size 14 arc seconds, not very big at all. So anyway, that's...
Well, what's the significance of the green dotted circle, which was much bigger than the previous slide?
That's simply the range that I've put in that I'm prepared to travel from Belfast. Okay. Yeah. If you put a bigger range, then you'll get a great big map of the whole of the United Kingdom and lines all over it. But so that's what that is. Okay, so that's transits of the ISS. Now then, our dear friend the Sun is doing nothing whatsoever. Hasn't been for a long time. This was as of Monday. Actually, I did this. At which point there had been 20 days with a completely blank disk there. And you see, if you look at the stats on this, go back to the last solar cycle, we got down to 73% spotless days in 2008, 71% 2009. It's coming around again. We're up so far in 2019 to 71% of all days have had no sunspots. And if we look at the cycles here, 22 was a really nice big one, 23 was a teeny bit smaller, 24 was smaller still. Predictions for 25, which we may or may not have started, we're just about at the bottom of 24/25. Now, predictions are that it will be similar to 24, i.e. not very big. But there's no real way of absolutely knowing until it happens. But we look to be pretty near the bottom now. So we'll maybe get another year next year with something of similar percentages, and then it will climb up as it did here quite suddenly. Actually, from 2009 was 71%, 2010 was only 14%, and then actually went down to 0 for a few years in between at the peak, where we got some nice auroras. Doesn't mean there's going to be no auroras, because there can be. And this is a bit of a new one on me, because I looked up. I knew about this, but I didn't know what it was called. The Russell-McFerrin effect. And the bottom line of which is that you tend to get more auroras around springtime and autumn time due to the equinoxes. Just the way that the Earth's magnetic field is lined up with the solar wind encourages auroras to happen. So we may, with the equinox having just passed, the day before yesterday, and there's cause for optimism here because there is a huge coronal hole here, sort of pointing almost straight towards us. This was taken yesterday. This is 24th, so that now will be coming round towards us. Give it 2 or 3 days to get here, perhaps, and looking at the weekend, we could be looking at auroras. That was one. There was no particular geomagnetic storm in progress there. This was Fairbanks, Alaska, which obviously has a a few degrees of advantage on us. But that was completely out of the blue. There was no storm in progress. They just got an aurora that they weren't expecting, and that can happen around the equinox because of that effect. So possible aurora. Nothing too much happening on the sun, but these coronal holes can sort of provide an adequate substitute sometimes for exploding sunspots. Planet summary has a load of data there, which I won't go through bit by bit. All we need to know here, now if you think about, we'll not talk astrology, but you'll bear with me. The sun is currently in Libra, and Mercury, Venus and Mars are all in Virgo, which means they're near the sun, basically, and you stand no chance really of seeing them, and if you did it would be dangerous. Now, Jupiter and Saturn, on the other hand, are visible. Jupiter is in the 13th sign of the zodiac of Fiacus, and Saturn is not very far away in Sagittarius, and we'll see that on a map shortly. Uranus and Neptune are reasonably visible. However, the problem with them is that they are both actually quite low. This is set for 9 o'clock Friday night, which is our observing time down at Delamont, if that turns out clear. And actually, when you look at the altitudes that these planets are at, they're all pretty not far away from the horizon in the evening, and they don't really get much higher, to be honest, either. So that's the planets. It's not a great time for the planets, but Jupiter and Saturn are both big enough and bright enough that even though they're quite low, you can see them. Let's have a little bit of a look around the sky. There's some things here. Finding north. Everyone knows how to find north, I hope. But here is the plough, the 3 in the handle and the 4 in the pan there. And we take the 2 Merak and Dubi, the 2 pointer stars at the end, follow them up the sky to become another bright star. And there is Polaris, and next to Polaris, that is the rest of Ursa Minor there. Really, Kochab is the most conspicuous other star, and it's visibly orange. But that's finding north. Another thing you can do, if you take these 2 opposite corners of the dipper here, and follow them approximately the same sort of distance again, around that area of sky there, you will find 2 nice galaxies, Messier 81 and 82. Wonderful pair of galaxies if you get a scope on those. You need a fairly good scope to see any detail on those. So a look at the southern sky. This is a great time of year to be photographing the Milky Way, because from really a month or so ago to about now, you can see quite a lot of the core down in Sagittarius, and that's it. This is getting. It's diminishing really as time goes on now, but that's a good view in the early evening. And as I mentioned there, Jupiter and Saturn, both in that part of the sky as well, both quite low, however. Look a little bit further up, and this is the summer triangle. Just a bit above where we were, this is the Milky Way, runs right through it, the Cygnus Rift. Here, this dark lane surrounded by light either side. 3 stars mark the summer triangle, Deneb, Vega, and down at the bottom there, Altair. Great piece of sky to look at. There's all sorts of things go on in that part of the sky. Now, one that I've never seen visibly, although I have loads of pictures of it, just a little bit to the left of Deneb, or 2 degrees to the east, being technical there, North America Nebula. It's a very red hydrogen alpha emitting cloud of planet-forming gases, star-forming gases, not planet-forming, probably planets as well. And it does look uncannily like North America. Has anyone ever seen it naked eye? It's theoretically possible, but I never have. But certainly it shows up nice and red on photographs, the more so if you've got a camera that's red sensitive, and cameras vary a lot, unless they've been modified to do it. There's also other things here worth seeing. There's Sagitta, the arrow here, that's Sagitta there, nice little constellation within the summer triangle, and that's got a nice globular cluster M71 within it. And also this star here, Beta Cygni, or Alberio, is probably about the best binary star in the sky. If you get even a small telescope on that will show two distinctly different coloured stars, one gold, one sapphire blue. Very beautiful star. So there's a lot to see there. The other thing you can do, getting close to the end now, we'll just do a quick bit of star hopping here. You find the Great Square of Pegasus. Now the Great Square of Pegasus, if we just look back at our previous thing, it's to the left of the summer triangle, or to the east here. This is it, and this is a different plot. Here it is. Now that is the Great Square of Pegasus. Now you measure the distance between the two top stars. You keep in your mind that distance, and you come down to the left side one here and go a similar distance till you come to another bright star, and that is Merak. There you stop at Merak, do a sharp right turn, do a short hop to the first bright star you come to. Not quite so bright as Merak, but that is Mu Andromedae. And then you go the same distance again, you'll see this fuzzy patch in the sky that probably looking not directly at it, that is to say using averted vision. You'll see this fuzzy patch, and that is light from 2.5 million years ago. The Andromeda Galaxy, the furthest away thing that you can see with the naked eye, or thereabouts. There's maybe one or two others that in contention there, but that's the easiest. Just up above that, the W of Cassiopeia, and then you take the two end stars of Cassiopeia here, and you'll see a fuzzy patch below them, equidistant from them, and that is the double cluster in Perseus, also just naked eye visible. So that's a little trip around the sky. The only other thing maybe worth looking for, you definitely need a telescope for this. There is a comet, C 2018 W2 Africana. It was sort of forecast to be another great comet because we're well overdue for another one, and as has happened so many times before, it's a bit of a damp squib, but people have seen it. And where you're looking again, come back to our friend here, the Great Square of Pegasus, and this is plotted for the weekend. It's approximately in that area at the bottom of the square there, just to the left. It has been moving down from Andromeda down there over the period of about a month or so. So if you do have a look around that area of the sky, have a squirt around there and have a look and see if you can see Comet Africana. And that's it. So enjoy your stargazing.